Before we start, tell me where you are listening from in the comments. Maybe you are someone who thinks successful people have perfect self-control and no hidden struggles. Maybe you assume that having money and achievement eliminates the need for unhealthy coping mechanisms. Maybe you have your own secret habits that you are ashamed to admit even to yourself. This conversation is for you. I want to tell you about an addiction I have carried for over 20 years. Not the kind of addiction that people usually talk about, not something involving substances or behaviors that are obviously destructive. This is something that most people would consider harmless, even admirable. Something that has helped me build companies and solve problems, but has also consumed parts of my life in ways that I am only now beginning to understand. This addiction has cost me relationships, sleep, peace of mind, and the ability to be present in moments that should have been meaningful. It has driven me to achieve things that seemed impossible, but it has also prevented me from enjoying those achievements once I accomplished them. Today, I want to share this secret with you. Not because I think you should judge me for it, but because I believe many driven, ambitious people struggle with the same compulsion, but never recognize it as an addiction because it looks like dedication, passion, or work ethic from the outside. Understanding this addiction has helped me realize why success often feels hollow, why achievement never seems to be enough, and why some of the most accomplished people are also some of the most restless and dissatisfied people you will ever meet. I am addicted to solving problems. Not just any problems, but specifically the hardest, most complex, most impossible problems I can find. Problems that other people have given up on, problems that experts say cannot be solved, problems that require years of effort with no guarantee of success. This might sound like a positive trait, and in many ways it has been. This addiction has driven me to work on electric vehicles when everyone said they would never be commercially viable, to start a space company when everyone said private companies could never compete with NASA, to pursue projects that seemed impossible but turned out to be just incredibly difficult. But like any addiction, it has taken over my life in ways that I did not recognize until recently. I cannot stop looking for the next problem to solve, the next challenge to tackle, the next impossible goal to pursue. The moment I make progress on one problem, I immediately start searching for another one that is even more difficult. I have never been able to just celebrate an achievement and rest in the satisfaction of having accomplished something meaningful. Every success immediately becomes the foundation for an even more ambitious project. Every solved problem reveals 10 new problems that seem even more urgent and important. This compulsion has shaped every major decision I have made for the past 2 decades. When PayPal was acquired, and I suddenly had more money than I knew what to do with, instead of taking time to enjoy financial security or explore personal interests, I immediately started looking for the biggest, most challenging problems I could find to work on next. Most people in my situation would have bought houses, taken vacations, pursued hobbies, spent time with family, or invested in relatively safe ventures that would preserve and grow their wealth. Instead, I invested everything in 2 companies working on problems that seemed impossible to solve: sustainable transportation and space exploration. I told myself this was about wanting to make a positive impact on the world, and that was partly true. But I now realize it was also about feeding an addiction to the rush of tackling seemingly impossible challenges. I needed problems that were big enough and difficult enough to consume all of my mental energy and provide the kind of intense focus that I had become dependent on. The pattern has repeated itself over and over. As soon as Tesla and SpaceX began to prove that they could work, I started Neuralink to work on brain-computer interfaces. When that was underway, I started Boring Company to work on transportation tunnels. When those projects were established, I bought Twitter because I saw problems with social media that I thought needed to be solved. Each time, I told myself that this was about addressing important challenges facing humanity. And each time, that was partially true. But I was also chasing the high of starting from zero and trying to build something that experts said was impossible. The problem with this addiction is not just that it consumes enormous amounts of time and energy. The problem is that it makes it impossible to be satisfied with any level of success or achievement. There is always another problem waiting to be solved. always another challenge that seems more important than enjoying what you have already accomplished. I have never been able to take a real vacation without spending most of it thinking about work problems. I have never been able to take a real vacation without spending most of it thinking about work problems. I have never been able to have a conversation with friends or family without part of my mind wandering to some technical challenge or business decision that I am trying to figure out. I have never been able to watch a movie, read a book, or engage in any leisure activity without feeling like I am wasting time that could be spent on something more productive and important. Even when I am physically present for family events or social gatherings, part of my attention is almost always focused on some problem that I am trying to solve. This constant mental occupation has affected my relationships in ways that I am only now beginning to understand. People have told me for years that I seem distracted during conversations, that I do not seem fully present when we are together, that they feel like they are competing with my work for my attention. I always dismissed this feedback because I thought I was good at multitasking, that I could think about work problems and still be engaged with the people around me. But I now realize that this was self-deception. You cannot be truly present with another person when half of your mind is occupied with technical challenges or business strategies. The addiction has also affected my ability to enjoy simple pleasures or find satisfaction in experiences that do not involve problem solving. I struggle to appreciate music, art, nature, or other sources of beauty and meaning that do not connect to some challenge I am trying to figure out. I have traveled to amazing places around the world, but I remember them primarily in terms of the work calls I took while I was there or the problems I was thinking about during the trip. I have attended incredible events and met fascinating people, but my memories of these experiences are often overshadowed by whatever work crisis was occupying my mind at the time. The most troubling aspect of this addiction is how it has affected my relationship with my children. I love them deeply and want to be present for their lives, but I struggle to turn off the problem-solving part of my brain even during family time. When my children are telling me about their day or asking for help with homework or just wanting to spend time together, part of my mind is often still occupied with some technical challenge or business decision. I hear what they are saying, but I am not fully listening because I am also trying to work through problems in the background. I have missed important moments in their lives, not because I was physically absent, but because I was mentally absent, consumed by whatever problem I was trying to solve at the time. They have learned to compete with my work for my attention, and too often the work has won. This realization has been devastating because I know that childhood is finite and these missed moments cannot be recovered. I know that my children will remember whether I was truly present with them during their important experiences, not whether I was working on projects that might change the world. The addiction has also made it difficult for me to maintain romantic relationships. Partners have told me that they feel like they are dating someone who is never fully available, never completely present, always partially occupied with problems that seem more urgent than the relationship. I have tried to explain that the work I do is important, that the problems I am solving could benefit millions of people, that the projects I am working on could help secure humanity's future. But I realize now that these explanations miss the point. The issue is not whether my work is important. The issue is that I have become unable to set boundaries around when and how much mental energy I devote to that work. Even when I am not actively working, I am thinking about work problems. Even when I am supposed to be relaxing or spending time with people I care about, part of my mind is always engaged with some challenge that I am trying to figure out. This constant problem solving has become such an ingrained part of how I function that I'm not sure I remember what it feels like to have a mind that is not occupied with trying to solve something. I'm not sure I know how to be present in a moment without simultaneously thinking about what problems need to be addressed next. The addiction feeds on itself in ways that make it difficult to break. Each problem I solve successfully reinforces the belief that I should take on even more difficult challenges. Each achievement creates pressure to accomplish something even more impressive. Each solved problem reveals new problems that seem even more urgent and important. The recognition and praise that come from working on difficult problems also feed the addiction. When people call me innovative or visionary or talk about how my companies are changing the world, it reinforces the compulsion to keep taking on bigger and more challenging projects. But I am beginning to understand that this cycle is unsustainable and ultimately self-defeating. You cannot build meaningful relationships or find lasting satisfaction if you are constantly consumed by the next problem to solve. You cannot be present for your life if you are always mentally occupied with challenges that exist primarily in the future. I am also starting to realize that my addiction to problem solving has made me less effective at actually solving problems. When you are constantly jumping from one challenge to another, you do not give yourself time to fully integrate the lessons from previous experiences. When you are always focused on the next impossible goal, you do not take time to appreciate and learn from what you have already accomplished. The constant mental occupation also creates a kind of cognitive overload that reduces the quality of thinking and decision-making. When your mind is always full of multiple complex problems, you cannot give any single problem the deep, sustained attention that breakthrough solutions often require. I have started trying to address this addiction by creating boundaries around when and how I engage with work problems. I try to designate certain times and spaces as problem-free zones where I focus entirely on being present with family or friends or just experiencing life without trying to fix or improve anything. This is much harder than it sounds for someone who has spent decades training their mind to constantly look for problems to solve. It requires conscious effort to notice when my attention is drifting toward work challenges and deliberately redirect it back to whatever is actually happening in the present moment. I have also started trying to practice what you might call productive rest, where I give my mind permission to not be working on any problems for specific periods of time. This feels wasteful and uncomfortable at first, but I am beginning to notice that I often return to work problems with fresh perspectives after giving my mind a break from constantly trying to solve them. The most important change I am trying to make is learning to appreciate and find satisfaction in problems that have already been solved rather than immediately moving on to the next challenge. This means taking time to actually experience and enjoy the achievements that my companies have accomplished instead of treating them just as stepping stones to even more ambitious projects. I am trying to remember that the point of solving problems is not just the intellectual satisfaction of having figured something out, but the positive impact that solutions can have on people's lives. That impact requires not just solving problems, but also making sure that the solutions actually get implemented and adopted in ways that benefit people. This requires a different kind of attention and engagement than the intense focus on individual technical challenges that I am addicted to. It requires being present for the implementation and refinement and scaling of solutions, not just the initial breakthrough insights. I am also trying to remember that some of the most important problems in life cannot be solved through intellectual analysis or technical innovation. Relationships, personal fulfillment, emotional health, and spiritual growth require different kinds of attention and engagement than the engineering challenges that I am naturally drawn to. These problems do not have clear solutions that can be discovered through sustained effort and clever thinking. They require ongoing attention, presence, and commitment over time. They require being willing to sit with uncertainty and ambiguity rather than trying to optimize everything. Learning to address these different kinds of problems requires breaking the addiction to constantly looking for the next technical challenge to solve. It requires accepting that some aspects of life are meant to be experienced rather than optimized, enjoyed rather than improved, accepted rather than fixed. This is not about giving up on working on important problems or abandoning the projects that I think could make a positive difference in the world. It is about finding a healthier relationship with problem solving that does not consume my entire mental and emotional capacity. It is about learning to be strategic about which problems deserve my attention rather than compulsively taking on every difficult challenge that I encounter. It is about recognizing that my time and mental energy are finite resources that need to be allocated thoughtfully rather than scattered across too many different projects. Most importantly, it is about remembering that the most important problems in my life are not technical challenges that can be solved through clever engineering, but relational and personal challenges that require presence, attention, and ongoing commitment rather than breakthrough insights. My addiction to problem solving has driven me to accomplish things that I am proud of and that I hope have made a positive difference in the world. But it has also cost me opportunities for connection, presence, and satisfaction that cannot be recovered through any amount of professional success. If you recognize yourself in this description, if you find yourself constantly consumed by the next challenge to tackle or the next goal to pursue, I want you to know that it is possible to find a healthier relationship with ambition and achievement. It is possible to work on meaningful problems without being consumed by them. It is possible to pursue ambitious goals without sacrificing your ability to be present for your life and your relationships. It is possible to be driven and successful without being addicted to the process of solving increasingly difficult problems. But like any addiction, breaking this pattern requires recognizing it as a problem first, then developing strategies for managing the compulsive behavior, and finally finding healthier ways to meet the underlying needs that the addiction was serving. Share this with someone who might need to hear that constant productivity and problem solving can become an addiction just like any other compulsive behavior. Subscribe if these conversations help you think more clearly about the hidden costs of relentless ambition. And remember, the most important problems in your life might be the ones that cannot be solved through harder work or cleverer thinking, but require presence, patience, and the willingness to simply be with what is, rather than constantly trying to fix what might be. It would change in your life if you spent less time trying to solve problems and more time simply being present for the experiences and relationships you already have.